that. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Lead, Sell, Grow, the Human Experience podcast. And today, buckle up, get some tissues, get a piece of paper and a pen, because what we're going to talk about has the ability, if you let it, to improve your life drastically. Now, before I get to introduce my incredible guest today, I want to encourage you to get your butt over to Facebook and join Lead, Sell, Grow, the Human Experience Mastermind, so I can connect with you personally and chat with you there. All right. Without any further ado, my guest today truly does have an incredible story. Anna Ditchburn was sexually abused for years by a person that was supposed to protect her. This abuse resulted in 2 forced abortions, which led to 16 consecutive miscarriages later in her life. At 21 years of age, Anna made the decision to break free from her abuser. It took a long time for her to free herself from the shame and pain that she felt over the years. But she overcame and made it her life purpose to help others overcome trauma and live a better life. Today, Anna is a certified hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner, and a proud host of Happy on the Inside podcast. So if you want, pause this, go and save that into your watch later list, because it's going to be awesome. Anna today lives in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, with the man of her dreams and my good friend, Laban Ditchburn. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. What an introduction. Woo! Heavy.
It's good to have you here. What a story. I mean, I'd like to just dive right in, and we'll get to who you are today, but I think it's very important for people to understand, like, they see you standing there, strong woman. Help me understand how you got, where the trauma started. Can we start there? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just one small thing. It's actually 18 consecutive miscarriages.
18.
By 18, what's today? 24th of April, 2023. Yes, but we probably will get into this. You know, Eric, I think my trauma started when I was 4 years old, when my biological father has left our family and never returned. And my mom became a single mother of 2 kids at the age of 24 with my 9-month-old brother. I'm getting cried for some reason. During the Russian economic depression. And you know, you were born in Russia. In 90s, it was so hard for people. So many people just left the country, you know. But my mom was working on the radio at those time. And during 90s, they would hardly pay the salary. So we were struggling financially and mentally and physically. And I remember this time I had to be strong for my mom. Like 4 years old baby. Can you imagine?
What does it mean to be strong at 4 years old?
I had to grow up fast and help my mom to take care of my younger brother. Oof. At the age of 5, I would go to the kindergarten. And in Russia, we usually go to kindergarten from like 2 to 6 years old, and I would take my brother to the kindergarten and in one group and go into my group. Like, how crazy it is. I have to be really smart, and I learned how to cook. I learned how to clean. Sometimes I would babysit my younger brother. Like, now, if you think in America, if you leave your 6 years old and your 2 years old babies in home by themselves, you would probably go to jail, or you know, they would probably take your kids away. But we had to survive, and my mom had to work, and we didn't really have any support from anyone. And at this time, I've learned that there is no help coming from the outside. I have to help myself. And 6 years later, when I was 10 years old, my mom met my stepfather. And we thought, finally, the knight in shining armor came into our life. The supporter, the man, the strong shoulder for us. But short after, we found out how horribly abusive this person was. He was an army guy, and he was very controlling, very manipulative, and mentally and verbally abusive. And so very quick, me and my brother learned how to walk on eggshells, just to keep quiet, to please our father, because at those times in Russia, it was very shameful to be a single mother. And so my mom wanted to do anything for my stepfather to stay in the family. And
How
she
old was
gave
your
all the
mom?
power away.
You were 4. I mean, your mom couldn't have been, I mean, she had to be in her 20s,
24,
24 years old.
24. Mm-hmm.
She was a baby.
Yeah. She was a baby having a baby. Exactly. And so it was literally like in an army in our house. Like we have to go back, we have to go to sleep at 10 p.m., no noise, nothing. Otherwise the punishment just wouldn't worth it. And I'll give you an example how it was in our family. After 10 p.m., we're not supposed to make any noise. And if you are sick, if you are struggling with pain, when I was sick, when I was struggling with pain, I would rather die than go out, open the door of my bedroom and ask for water. That's how we became very strong.
What would happen if you
And
did?
sometimes he would take his army leather belt and he would, make a few punches, like, or sometimes he would prohibit us of go out with our friends for a week or two.
And this,
Or
you're
sometimes
little.
we have to clean the whole house.
Wow.
So we go and fall asleep. Anyway, and you can imagine we just get used to this sort of environment where you have to obey all the rules, whatever our stepfather is saying. And we thought, he's a father, he knows better what's good for us. Anyway, fast forward, when I was 15, he started sexually abusing me, which, as you mentioned, result in 2 pregnancies and in 2 forced illegal abortions. And
What does
one
that mean,
abortion.
Anna? What is a forced illegal abortion?
Forced when he forced me to do these abortions, just to hide his crime. And illegal because I was underage, because my mom didn't know this. So he paid the doctor to do this abortion. And I was literally in and out in the hospital without any care, without any follow-ups, without literally nothing. And years later, when everything came up, my mom tried to follow to find any paperwork that I was in this hospital. And it wasn't. There was no paperwork.
They hid it.
They probably didn't have it in the first place.
Do you think the abortions that were done, I mean, I don't know if there's a proper way to do one, but done properly, or did they use some kind of a technique that was not very healthy for a woman?
It's a good question, Eric. I don't know, to be honest. I know at those time it was very porch abortions. So they didn't really care about women's health. And that's what resulted in my 18 consecutive miscarriages, because what's happened, it was the technique when they would take literally a metal spoon and scrub out of the from the wound the baby. And so what's happened, they scrubbed too much layer. And so when I'm getting pregnant, my baby doesn't stick to the uterus because there is no layer to attach to. That's what the abortions do. There are many different kind of abortions, but I just want for your listeners to know there are huge complications of this procedure. And I know I don't know even one woman who wouldn't regret doing abortion in her life. That's how serious it is.
Powerful stuff, Anna. Okay, so at this point, do you remember like the first time it went from verbal and physical abuse to sexual abuse?
Oh, yes. The first verbal and physical abuse from our stepfather I saw when it wasn't with me, it was with my younger brother. He was 6 years old at those time, and he did something really silly, like 6 years old baby. And my stepfather didn't like it. And he grabbed him and he took him to another bedroom, took his leather belt and locked the door behind him. And I remember my brother yelling and screaming and asking for help. Mommy, please help. Mommy, please help. And I remember I got so scared, but I was trying to break into this door to help my brother. But my mom grabbed me so strong and she covered my ears. And we were sitting, she was holding me, we were sitting until my stepfather was done. I didn't understand why she did it. But then I think she did it so she don't lose him, because she was so afraid to lose him. She was in such a codependent relationship with him. And the sexual abuse started when I turned 15. Again, it started from small things, from his jokes, and then turned into touches inappropriately. And then because I wasn't saying anything, because he threatened me. If I will tell anyone, he will destroy my mom's and my brother's life. And I believed him, knowing what he was capable of. And so he realized his power. He realized that I'm not going anywhere to talk to anyone. And that's how the sexual abuse continued for 6 years.
So two questions for you, maybe a little bit more. One is, your biological father, is he and your brothers, do you and your brother have the same dad?
Yes.
Where was he?
He moved to another city. And to be honest, I saw him probably 3 times in my life. Okay. 2 of them, he hasn't even talked to me for some reason.
So your mom, I mean, she had to be 19, 20 years old when she had you, based on...
She was 19. She was
19 years old. And your dad, do you know how much older or same age? Like what was...
Same age.
So they were babies. They had a couple of kids and he just rolled out.
Eric, I'm actually glad you brought this point, because this morning I had a very profound healing journey. Again, the healing is in the progress. You never stop. But we are trying to make a baby with my husband. And so we are trying, to do this healing and help my body to heal. And so the healer, his name is Kai Jordan. Huge shout out to him. He's an amazing guy. He took me back to my 4 years old, when I was struggling and when I was actually feeling guilty for my father leaving the house. I don't know why I took it on myself, but I was feeling so guilty for this. And this realization came into my mind. And Kai told me, Anna, they just didn't know. They were so young. They didn't know what to do. They were still a babies. And then I was like, my goodness. Like literally, I remember myself at 19 years old. I was still, riding my bike, playing the toys, like sort of, just going out with my friends. Like I wasn't even thinking about the baby. And here my parents are stuck at home with a huge responsibility. And not both of them, because my father went to army when my mom got pregnant, and he came back when I was 2 years old. So literally my mom, a 19 years old woman, was by herself. And I'm writing my book right now, also Happy on the Inside. And I'm telling the story how my mom actually had a birth. It's amazing. If you want, I can share with you.
Yeah, please.
She was at home by herself when she felt that she's ready to have a baby. And again, there was no support around. And so she had to walk for 1 kilometer to the nearest telephone, because before we didn't have a phones at home. She walked while she was in labor. She was thinking, I asked her, Mom, why didn't you ask anyone to call the ambulance? She said, I was so ashamed that there is no one around me from my family to help. And so I have to reach out to someone. And she called the ambulance, and she introduced herself as a neighbor. She didn't even tell that it was her giving a birth. And she walked back slowly, slowly, slowly. And by the time she came back to the apartment, the ambulance arrived. Just imagine how much shame and pressure was on this young woman.
That's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. Let me ask you, you've done a lot of healing work. Where do you think that shame came from at 4 years old, that you're, taking the blame for your father leaving?
I think at 4 years old, I experienced more guilt. The shame came when I was experiencing the sexual abuse. And now, after doing all this work, healing work, I realized, Eric, that the shame I was experiencing, it wasn't even my shame. My stepfather inserted his shame on me. He was constantly shaming me. If I tell anyone, people will hate me. Your mother will hate you for breaking your woman's happiness.
Mm.
And then the whole situation, trying to keep it quietly, making sure that no one knows about this, because otherwise people will pursue me as a broken woman, as a broken child. That's where the shame was growing.
Well, what about the guilt? Like, I could see, if a young mother who's super frustrated that she's now left alone with little kids would say things like, you know, to make you feel guilty, right? Like, it's because of you, your dad left. If it wasn't for you, I'd still be married and happy, or something like that. I could see angry young women who are emotional saying, and I could see that forming a guilt in a young girl. But I'm just curious, like, what caused your guilt? And the reason why I ask is because, similarly to you, my dad left my mom and my sister when I was like 2 years old, maybe even younger. And even though he came around once in a while, he was not, he was gone. But I never felt guilt about it. There were certain things that, as I went through my own healing, that I realized that what how I am in a relationship due to being abandoned, or what I felt was being abandoned by my father. But I don't think I ever felt guilt, because of me, he left. And it sounds like you felt that.
There was a story. It looked so huge for me. at those time, but it's actually came up in this healing this morning. I remember I was probably, maybe less, 3.5 or so. And no, I was actually like 2.5 years old before my brother even came. And my mom was having her girlfriends in our house, and they were, drinking. And I caught my mom smoking in the toilet. And like 2 years old baby, you literally telling everyone everything what you see around. And so I ran to my dad like happy, and I said, dad, mom is smoking, thinking I'm doing something really good. And so he jumped from he was in another bedroom. He jumped and he went to the toilet, to the bathroom. He opened the door. He saw her. He literally dragged her out of this bathroom. And I think they had a really bad fight. And at those point, I felt so guilty. I remember it like yesterday. I felt so guilty for telling this. And after this, they were having fight after fight after fight after fight. And I thought that all these fights are based on what I did. And so this guilt was growing. Now I'm realizing, even if I wouldn't tell anything, they would still split. Because my father, he came from army, very, young, hungry for life, hungry for love. And I know that he was cheating on my mom a lot. And so he wouldn't come home during the night. He would probably disappear for a few nights. And that's what was causing their fights all the time. And I literally came to this realization this morning, Eric, that no matter what I did, I wouldn't be able to hold them together or to separate them.
This morning you came to this realization.
Literally.
This is like you're in your early 30s now?
35.
35. So here we are 30
It's
years
now,
later.
you know why? The healing is a work in progress. It's like once you start healing, you uncover layer by layer, because I couldn't remember this moment very, very clear, but Kai took me all the way down, all the way, and that's where it came.
And is that through hypnotherapy?
It was part of hypnotherapy as well.
Huh. Okay. Is there anything else that I need to ask you or that we should know about this insane past of yours before we start digging out of that hole?
Probably when I was 21, I found myself driving my car and thinking, Anna, just hit this tree. Just speed up and hit this tree, and all this nightmare will finish. And then the seconds before I literally ran into this tree, the voice on the back of my head said, why you? Why should you struggle? Why should you be the one who end your life? You have to be strong. You have to. And that's when I made a decision to leave the house. And when I came home, I said, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. And my stepfather tried to manipulate me through my mom, as he was always doing this. And he said, if you leave the house, I'm going to expel your mother because I don't need her here. And I said, you know what? Do whatever you want. I was trying to save this family for ages. And I don't think my mother was wanted to be saved, because how many times I begged her to leave this man? How many times I begged her just to, to take our stuff and go?
Why
She
were you
refused to
begging?
do this.
Why were you begging her? Like, what reasons were you giving her that she should leave? Because she didn't know that you were being sexually abused, right?
Not at this time,
So what was
because
going on?
because the verbal abuse and the physical abuse was happening.
Got it.
I am so convinced that my stepfather was bipolar. So convinced, because we never knew what kind of you know, attitude he will come home with, and he could change his behavior like within a seconds. And after my mom was hiding in the wardrobe for literally 24 hours because he didn't like something, I said, Mom, this is not the life you want. Please, let's leave. And she didn't want to.
It's scary.
It's scary, and I know people don't like to hear it, but doesn't matter how abusive the person is, it's still a very convenient, it's a safety place for you, because you know what you know this environment. That's why she didn't want to.
The devil, you
And
know.
I think she didn't believe in herself. I know she had a very low self-esteem because of the family she grown up with, and she was a loveless child. My grandmother didn't love her for some reason, and so she was craving this love. She didn't come to this relationship with my stepfather full of love and self-sufficient woman. She came to get love. She came to get attention. And it's like a drug. It doesn't matter what attention you get, bad or good, it's still like a drug. You need this attention. That's why she didn't want to leave.
Wow. So you came home, you said, I'm done, 21 years old, I'm leaving. I don't care what you do, I'm out. What did your mom say? And at what point did you have the conversation with your mom?
I can't remember exactly what was happening. I think I just made a decision. My mom wasn't always stopping me, like preventing from things. She was always supporting me. She was like my angel. If you feel like doing this, go for it. I will just support you. And I just left the house, and they had a huge fight where he literally threw her on the street with all her things and locked the door.
Because you left?
Yeah. And
How
you
were
know
you
what's happened,
justified?
Eric? It wasn't surprising, because he could like get exposed, exploded over the small thing, like literally finding a hair on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't surprised that he just, found some small reason to start the fight with her and expel her from the house. But the very important thing, what happened, she didn't really realize why he did this. And she went into a very deep depression, and she was trying to get back with him for many, many years. She was single for many years, Eric, and she was waiting for him. And she was literally still waiting for him until September 2021, until I told her that he was sexually abusing me. Because the conversation started that she said, you know what? I probably would try to get back with your stepfather after like 15 years. I was like, Mom, but he is such a horrible person. Why are you doing this? She said, Anna, because at least I had a family. At least I had someone to live with. Imagine how desperate she was. And that's when I decided to tell her. And plus I was ready after all the healing I've done.
Did she believe you?
Yes. Eric, I was living in Australia at those time. And I called her on a video call. I was crying. I was crying because I was ready to tell her, but I was so scared. I was so scared of her reaction. I didn't want to lose my mom. I would rather die than lose her. But I decided this is the time. I can't carry this huge rock by myself because it's a very lonely and dark place, to be honest. And I told her, I said, Mom, I was sexually abused when I was 15. Eric, I tried to tell her a year ago, but I didn't tell by whom. And she dismissed it. She just didn't know how to react. And a year prior, I told her by whom. She said, so what, Anna? So many girls are getting sexually abused. Like, move on. Suck it up and move on. And I was like, wow, if she would ask me who, when, how, why, I would probably tell her. But I'm glad she didn't. I'm glad this situation went this direction because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to any reaction. And so this time I told her, I need to tell you something. And I started the conversation with, Mom, I forgave you. And she said, whoa, wow, what for? Tell me, please. I said, Mom, I forgive you for not being able to protect me. I forgive you for not being so strong for me when I needed you. She said, Anna, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for telling me this. And I said, Mom, I was sexually abused when I was 15. And then she realized, this is serious. This is serious. And then I said, it was my stepfather. She was shocked. She was shocked at the beginning. And then she asked me, why didn't you tell me? I said, Mom, I didn't know how you would react. And he said, if I tell you, you're going to hate me for breaking your woman's happiness. And she said, Anna, I love you so much. You are my daughter. And even if the whole world will be against you, I will always stay by your side. This is the reaction I was always hoping for, Eric. And we were very connected, but we connected even stronger. And she became a mama bear. She nearly killed this motherfucker. Sorry, my French.
It's all
She
right.
literally went to his workplace. She saw him sitting in the car and she started to smashing this car, like yelling and screaming on top of her lungs. You're a pedophile. How could you do this to my daughter? A woman who would never ever tell him anything bad. She was so protective over me, and she pressed the criminal charges straight away. And I had to go to Russia to testify against my stepfather. And it was in September 2021, during the strictest lockdown and international travel ban in Australia. And I eventually got out from Australia. And when I went to Russia, I was very scared of how we're gonna connect on one-on-one, because telling my mom about the situation on the phone is one thing, but actually looking in at her eyes, that was a different thing. And you know how it felt. There was no more elephant in the room. The relationship became so close. And she was by my side all the time when I was testifying against my perpetrator, spending hours and hours in the police office, going through physical examination, psychological examination, all of this. It was really hard, but if I wouldn't have her, I probably wouldn't be able to do this.
What a story. Did they convict him?
No, because we didn't have any physical evidence, and it's been such a long time. But what I did, Eric, I realized we don't have any childhood sexual abuse survivors support in my hometown, and I was born in Sakhalin Island, just north of Japan. The closest helpline was in Moscow, which is like 9,000 kilometers from us. And I wanted to do something. And I decided to share my story publicly, hoping that even if one girl hear my story, it will help her if she's going through a similar situation. And I called the biggest publisher in my hometown and I said, would you be interested to publish my story? And I spent 2 hours with this amazing journalist. He was so, I don't know how to say, understanding. He was very gentle, asking me all these questions. And I left my email address saying, girls and boys, if you are going through a similar situation and you have no one to talk to, send me an email. And the article went published in a few months and it went viral. 25,000 views in my small hometown, like maybe with 30,000 people, where everyone knows each other.
Wow.
25,000 views within a few hours, and hundreds of emails from women and men telling me their stories and saying, thank you so much for opening up. And at those points, Eric, I've realized how many people are out there still struggling in silence with their trauma. And that's how I decided to become the loudest voice for those people. And I started my podcast and now I'm sharing my story.
Wow. So this, I mean, all of this happened within the last few years for you. You've carried that burden for
Yes,
so long.
for 20 years, nearly 20 years.
Let me ask you, have you forgiven him?
Yes,
When,
I've done
how did you do that?
with the help of hypnotherapist. It took me a while. It was a huge job I had to do for myself because I was carrying a lot of anger towards him. I just want him to suffer. You know, I want him to be dead. But what I didn't realize, by keeping this anger and all these negative emotions within me, bringing all this past, I was like literally drinking poison, expecting him to die, because it was poisoning my life. And when I realized it, I had to let it go. And plus, with the help of my amazing hypnotherapist, she's just like I don't know, Maria Magdalena for me. She explained to me that his childhood wasn't so good. And I knew it. And so because of his childhood trauma, and he probably was probably sexually molested as well. He brought his childhood trauma into his adulthood. And when you are hopeless as a boy, you want to take control over, when you're an adult, over the weakest people. It happens as one of the consequences. And so he was just trying probably to regain his control back and power over us.
Did you tell him you forgave him, or you have not talked to him since you left? Or like, did you talk to him at all during the trial or since you left the house?
I haven't told him because we just didn't have a opportunity to communicate. But what I did, I called my biological father. And I called him, and he lives in Vladivostok, and he's just like this stoic Russian man, very, serious. And I said, I'm calling you not as your daughter. I'm calling you as a friend. And I just wanted to tell you that I forgave you. He was quiet for 1 minute on the phone. And we had an amazing conversation after this, Eric. And for the very first time, he told me, I love you, daughter.
Wow. Why is it so important to forgive as you're on your journey from trauma to healing?
I just wanted to say, so many people don't understand the difference between forgive and forget and move on. Okay, when people still reliving this trauma, they what they hear is you just need to forget and move on. you will never forget. But what's happening when you forgive, you release all these negative emotions attached to you. It's like being chained to this person, to your perpetrator, and you stuck in the same room and you constantly connected to him. But by forgiving, you're releasing him, you're releasing all these negative emotions, you're releasing the poison from your body, literally. And it helps you to go higher, to move on, to let it go, and to finally live your own life. You will, I still remember what was happening. I remember every single moment, but there are no emotions attached to this.
Yeah, and forgive doesn't mean become friends and start, hanging out together. Forgive just means, well, are there other ways to let them go besides forgiveness, or forgiveness is the only way?
I can see it as the most important step to let this go, because we cannot let it go before we forgive, before we understand actually what is the mechanics behind this situation and behind the forgiveness. Again, it's like you need to break the chain first to let this person go and to let yourself grow.
Got it. Wow, Anna, what a past. So can we jump into how did the healing begin for you? Like, what were some of the first steps you've taken? How did you even realize that you need to heal from this?
Love this question. My favorite ones. I was going through 11th miscarriage, and the doctor called me aside and he said, Anna, we can't find any physical reason for you to lose your babies. And this is nothing to do with your man. It's something to do with this and with this. And I knew exactly what it was. And I was living with Laban, my husband, at those time. we were not married at those time. And I saw how much he wants to have a baby. And I've just realized probably my trauma is stopping my body from keeping this pregnancy.
And for those
And
of
I
you
came
who are
home.
listening, sorry, Anna, for those of you who are listening and not watching this on YouTube, what Anna was pointing to was her head and her heart when she said that the miscarriages were related to this and this. So go ahead. Sorry, Anna.
Mm-hmm. But it didn't happen like overnight. Oh, I'm gonna tell. I was slowly trying to help myself, to prepare myself to tell my story to Laban. I wanted to do this, but I was so afraid of his reaction. I was so afraid that he's gonna leave me. I was so afraid that he will judge me. And it took me a while to feel safe with him. And Eric, at the beginning of our relationship, he told me, Anna, you can ask me anything you want as long as you're happy to hear the answer. Because he wanted to start this relationship based on the truth and safeness. And you met him. He always, tell his stories. He doesn't hold back. And I was like, how this person is telling all those stories, all these failures and all these, challenges so freely. I want to be the same. I want to free myself from this, heavy burden. And so it took me a while to feel actually safe with him before I open up. And I think it's a huge respect to him for making me feel safe. And so he was driving me somewhere, and He was, talking about his mom, how his mom was constantly trying to educate him, taking him to the church 2 times a day, like making him preaching in tongue, blah, blah, blah. He was going on and on and on. And I was like, your mother is a very good mother compared to my stepfather. And I got scared. It was just, it was just came out. And he was like, he turned around and he said, what is happening? What do you mean? Tell me more. And then I opened up. Oof, and it was such a hard journey, to be honest, because Eric, what I was trying to do all these 20 years, I was bottling all these memories down, trying to forget. And then suddenly all those memories came out. And it wasn't easy for me to deal with them. And I didn't want to talk to anyone about Laban, what's happening to me, because I thought, I just dealt with that and I moved on. What's a point to talk about the past? But Laban told me, Inna, it's such a huge trauma and you have no idea what kind of effect it does on your pregnancy and your life. And, slowly I started to realize, yes, I probably need to ask for help.
So when you bottled it up, did you have any vices that you were using? Like, how did you keep it down for so long? Vices like, I don't know, alcohol, drugs, none of that stuff.
With drugs, I was lucky because in Sakhalin, it's very prohibited and you don't have access to drugs. I've never tried any drugs apart of medical grade MDMA and mushrooms, just like recently last year, but for the healing journey. I was drinking
something. I've heard of that. I've heard of that ayahuasca or something like that.
Ayahuasca. I've
Yeah,
heard
that's
about
it.
this as well. I haven't tried. Apparently it's one of the powerful tools again to release your trauma. But I wasn't a big drinker, only because I had to control everything around me. I had to control who is around me, behavior, because what my stepfather did, like during those times, he would make me drunk until I pass out, and I would wake up with a lot of pain. And that's why I couldn't drink a lot, because I was always afraid that someone will do something to me. I think it was more working on myself, but for me it was work. I was a horrendous workaholic. I could work like for 11 hours a day, work. And I was a huge perfectionist. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and high expectations. And so for me, my advice was to get a lot of success, to be successful, to be rich, so people like me, so people respect me. I think that's what for me was distracting me from my trauma.
What kind of effect did it have on your relationships? Like, how long, were you more attracted to abusive men after that? Or did you just not trust any men? Or like, what happened when you left the house? And by the way, what's the gap between the time you left at 21 till when you met Laban?
I met Laban in 2018. So we've been in September 2023 will be 5 years.
Okay.
As we are together. Yes, I didn't trust men, but I was codependent on relationships. I got promiscuous at some point, so I would probably date like 2-3 men at the same time. But I was ending up in abusive relationships. or over and over and over again. And so I met my ex-husband in Thailand when I was with my mom on a holidays. He came over, he introduced himself, and he was living in Australia. He's an Australian, born in Croatia. And so the relationship started. I moved to Australia. I was so in love with him. And then probably 3 years later, I realized that I married my stepfather. I could literally predict what he's about to say, because I saw the patterns of between him and my stepfather.
Wow.
And I was really struggling in those relationships. I didn't want to. I literally get out from one horror and jump into another. And 4 years later in a marriage, I stayed in my marriage probably 2 years longer than I supposed to. Again, and that's where I understood my mom, because I was so afraid of judgment from the cousin of my brother-in-law's sister. Like literally what people think of me. Are they gonna say that I'm a loser, can't hold my marriage together? I was in a foreign country. I just started my job. My earnings were really small. I didn't have place where to go. So, and I was staying in those abusive relationships. And that's when I didn't want to leave. Again, I was in such a deep depression. And I was, remember sitting on the couch, holding the, I think some painkillers and water. And my mom called just out of the blue. And I said, Mom, if you won't hear from me again, just know I love you so much, but I can't live like this anymore. And my mom, who studied psychology while she was in a relationship with my dad, stepfather, just, to learn how to live with abuser, she said, Anna, before you do anything to yourself, I want you to write the list of your ideal partner. And I said, I don't believe in this bullshit. All men are the same. She said, just try, please, for me. And I started to write the list of my ideal partner, crying. And as I was writing, my energy started to shifting. I didn't know what was happening. And I wrote, he's a New Zealander. He's bold. He doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs. He's very loyal. He's very honest. He has an amazing sense of humor. He's an amazing cook. He loves traveling. He loves kids. Like literally a detailed list, like he's sitting next to me and I'm just describing him to you. A week and a half later, I was walking to get my coffee and I saw this man walking towards me, and his eyes, was something about his eyes. And as he came closer, he stopped me and he said, excuse me, but you are stunning. And I wonder if you would like to have a drink with me one day, with the confidence of thousands of Spartans. And I said, you look good too. And we had this short conversation, but Eric, my heart knew it's him. It's like, it's the whole my body, the whole my existence was yelling and screaming, this is him, this is him. Because I wrote the explicit list of my ideal partner. And I believe that my subconscious helped me to attract the right time, the right place, the right opportunity to meet my person. And we live happily after. And then later I found out that he's a New Zealander. And I wanted to meet a New Zealander because I went to New Zealand like a few months prior, and I met him and I fell in love with those people. They're so good.
Wow. Anna, that's what a story. So now you're a hypnotherapist, and I'm assuming it's because hypnotherapy helped you get through your own traumas. You're also an
Exactly.
NLP practitioner. Help me understand how you use those two skills.
Sure. And you're right. I became a hypnotherapist because I saw the power of hypnotherapy and how it can help you to literally eliminate all those stuck emotions, negative thinking, limiting beliefs, and to release those trauma. Because the problem with the trauma, how people say you have to overtake it. Imagine this is the trauma. I'm just showing my wrist. You can't overtake it. The only way to release your trauma is to go through. The only way. And you have to go, not that you have to, but if you really want to understand, if you really want to learn something from this, you need to go back into this situation. Because what's happened to me when my sexual abuse happened, for me, it seemed so huge, so shameful, so big, so painful. But when I went back as my 33 years old, Anna, and I saw this situation through my own eyes, my perception of the situation was completely different. And then I realized that I was an innocent child. I just got frozen because I didn't know what to do, because it was my body response, my survival mechanism. It's not because I was so stupid and I couldn't do something that I was blaming myself for a long time, but it's just because I didn't know how to react to the situation. And so the hypnotherapy and NLP is helping you to connect to your subconscious, to go through your critical thinking into your subconscious and work with those traumas and stuck emotions on your subconscious level. Because you might not remember some of the things with your mind, or if you feel stuck, if you don't know what to do, but your subconscious always knows what to do. It always remembers everything. And so the hypnotherapy really helped me to go through this critical thinking, which we developed at the age of between 9 and 12, and to look at this trauma through my own eyes, realize the lessons I have to learn, and release it.
Now, there are people who may not even know that something they experienced as a child ended up being traumatic for them, and it's causing them to behave certain ways today. How do you have to be aware of a trauma? Because you were aware of your trauma to go back in. Like, you could sit down with a practitioner and say, here's what happened to me from 15 to 21. I want to release that. But if I only see the results I'm getting, right? If I see that I'm always sabotaging relationships, or I'm not making any money, or if I'm always upset about something, but I don't know what caused that in my past, is there a way to be able to go deep and uncover that through NLP and through hypnotherapy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we use this hypnotic stage, it helps us to go deep and to uncover that something that you might not even remember, something you're not aware of. That's the thing. Because I've done like a huge amount of work. I went through counseling, psychologists, psyche specialists, shamans. I did MDMA, mushrooms, like you name it. I wrote the letter to my wound. I work on my inner child. But the hypnotherapy really helped me to see what is inside me, what is in my subconscious, what is it holding onto very tight. And I saw the patterns, like, for example, people pleasing. I thought, this is just the way I am. Working for 11 hours, this is just the way I am. Being like scared of men in authority men. This is just who I am. And then hypnotherapy really helped me to see those patterns, where this is coming from. If you meet me 4 years ago, no way I would stand here and tell my story or even tell you something, because I was so shut down in my childhood. I couldn't have a conversation with people. And now I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Because I saw this pattern with my hypnotherapist, that I was shut down as a child. We worked on it. We went through this. I've learned my lessons, and I released it. And it happens in a one session, when we work on one problem or one stuck emotion. For me, it's the quickest way to work on your trauma, because during these 20 years, I thought I'm working on myself. I'm working. It took me 20 years to do what my hypnotherapist did in one session. You can see the result.
Wow. Amazing. And what most people don't, I think, understand, because I didn't, right? I'm not sitting here from a place of authority. Most people don't really truly understand what trauma is. And I learned probably a year and a half ago, Julia and I, we were involved in veterans communities, and we want to start a nonprofit to help veterans deal with their trauma. So we went through a course taught by a rabbi on logotherapy. And logotherapy is really the practice from Viktor Frankl that he created. He's the guy that wrote A Man's Search for Meaning, and he was a Holocaust survivor. He's a psychiatrist who went through the Holocaust and then wrote A Man's Search for Meaning, which highly recommend if you haven't read it. But in it, he describes exactly how did some people survive, and how come some people died during the Holocaust? Like, what was the difference between those who survived and wanted to survive and those who didn't? And anyway, what he realized is having a purpose to live for and a reason to live for really helps you get through anything when you have that clear vision. But in that course, he also talked about what trauma is that I didn't realize. Like, to me, I thought trauma was something bad happening to you, right? So sexual abuse is trauma, car accident, witnessing a murder, like things like that, going through war, all traumatic experiences. But really what trauma is, and you said this word before, like we're taught, we know about fight or flight, but then there's also freeze. And at the point where we're helpless, we freeze. And that is what psychiatrists define as the point of trauma happening. And so the reason why I say that is because as a 2-year-old, 50% of people in the world get divorced. Like 50% of marriages end in a divorce. So, a 9-year-old seeing his parents get divorced might not be a traumatic experience. A 2-year-old,
But for two,
the parents getting divorced right after she told on her mom for smoking, and seeing her mom come out and get beat up, freeze, trauma. Same experience, different age groups, right? So it's not necessarily an experience that's going to cause the trauma. It's our freezing and feeling helpless at the moment and how we see it that causes the trauma. And so the other reason I'm saying that is because I think we all, or majority of us, have these experiences through our life where we froze as a little kid, that now we're seeing, we're getting a result from that we don't really like, but we don't know what's causing it or how to change it. So what we do is we change our actions, right? So you might be overweight. And so what do? You get on diets, but what happens sooner or later, you get back to the same weight you don't like to be in. Financially, you might make a little more money, but what happens over time is, and it's because that trauma is programmed in the subconscious mind, and that's really what's controlling it. And it sounds like what you're saying is, if we truly want to get to the bottom of it and change who we are and change the results we're getting in our life, hypnotherapy could be a really quick way to do that.
and very effective one. And you know, Eric, spot on, like traumatic events, freeze, hopeless. And I want to expand on this a little bit more, because the sexual abuse, like one-off event, is a traumatic experience. It's an experience. But where the danger is when you leave this experience untreated. That's where the trauma starts to develop. And without working on it, without going through this, without talking about this, we start developing the techniques, like survival mechanisms based on this traumatic event. And that's where it gets very dangerous, because you don't know how would normal person react to the same thing, and how would traumatized person react to the same, exactly the same thing. Like, for example, if we take myself with sexual abuse, and I take another girl who grown up in a beautiful environment, and when we meet a person, she can see him as a, like, wow, loving and amazing person, and I would see him as a potential danger, as a potential perpetrator. It is because my body learned how to survive and save me based on my belief that, you know, every man is a potential perpetrator. That's where it gets dangerous.
Absolutely. Anna, I've held you way longer than I probably should have. Laban's probably pissed at me right now. Tell him I said I'm sorry, but you just have such an incredible story. I love talking to you, and I love what you're doing, helping people get through their trauma. And, you know, if you can't, like me personally, I can't really pinpoint a trauma I've went through in my life, although my parents got divorced. I've been through a lot of stuff, but I don't know that they've caused some kind of a trauma yet. But I'm very curious to learn more what like hypnotherapy can do and help me uncover, because I'm sure there's so much stuff buried down there. And that's exactly what you help people with.
Eric, don't compare your experience with my experience.
Absolutely.
Because it can be something really small. Like, for example, you wake up at 2 years old and parents are not around, and you feel like, actually, you mentioned the fear of abandonment. That's a trauma as well.
You know, for me, so I've done a lot of work as well. And what I realized for me, and this is not with hypnotherapy, so I could be wrong, right? I'm smart enough to know that I could be wrong. But what I see based on all the evidence, my relationships is I don't get attached. I keep everyone at an arm's distance, and I don't let people in too close. And what I realized was that something, as a little kid, what it told me was that if my father could leave me and abandon me, anybody can. And so fuck them, they're not getting close. And so I don't know if I'm necessarily like Julia, my wife, she's probably the only one that's in. My kids are probably in, but nobody else, like, still to this. And it's not conscious. It's not something I do consciously. It's just, you know, hey, this is my circle and nobody's getting in. It's really messed up sometimes.
I was exactly the same.
Yeah.
The same. But now what I realized, I'm letting more people come into my life because I've learned how to trust them. I literally unlearned how to be suspicious or detached, and I've learned how to be more trusting, more loving, more accepting. And you know what's happening now? I attract more people into my life who, with a like big heart, who want to help genuinely, who trustworthy. That's what's happened. Because once you keep this, I don't want to let anyone come, your subconscious, your universe will, it's like a genie. Yes, Eric, like people can abandon you, and so you subconsciously attract those people who can abandon you, not necessarily, but they can.
Very
But
interesting.
when you release this trauma, your genie, yes, Eric, it's like, because our subconscious is our biggest friend. It does everything what you think about. Yes, Eric, all people, they want to help. They want to be like, they love you. They want to stay in your life long and long and long, as long as you need them. That's the difference.
Very powerful stuff. Real quick, what in your professional opinion is the difference between the brain and the mind?
The brain is a physical part of the body. It's our organ. The mind is something that you can't see or you can't understand. You can't, pursue. The mind is what keeps us surviving. It's
Where is it? Is it in our brain or is it outside of us, or is it one mind that we're all tapped into?
not our mind is what our brain produce. That's what we experience. So the pictures we see, the people we see, what is happening to us, we receive those signals through our eyes, nose, touches, smell, and then our brain sends the signals, and then our mind try to distinguish what is it: hot, cold, dangerous, pleasure, blah, blah, blah. I'm rambling here.
Put you on the spot with that one. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. And I don't know if anybody really knows the answer to it. I think we all kind of guess, but you gave a pretty good answer for it.
It's those little sparks that are happening in our brain.
I gotcha. Anna, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to connect and learn more and possibly learn about their own traumas and go through a healing process for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go on my website. It's annaditchburn.com. You can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Anna Ditchburn. I'm trying to get into Twitter. I'm so bad with social media, like a limiting belief. But yeah, those are the main platforms. And you can also see, you can download my free book, 7 Secrets of start being happy on the inside. That I put the 7 lessons I've learned through my healing journey and through my trauma recovery, for people to help them to see some of the patterns that they might experience in their life. So check it out.
Love it, Anna. Thank you so much for being here. And wow, what a story. I really appreciate how open and authentic you were, and I'm so grateful that you came on to share.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. You're such a great host.
Bye, Anna.